Welcome to the Irrawaddy. Today we will discuss the outcome of the election and post-election scenarios and transfer of power. Here we invited Richard Horsey, who was based in Yangon, who speaks fluent Burmese, can read and write Burmese very well, a former ILO officer, and also he writes several reports for the ICG International Crisis Group based in Brussels, and he is independent political observer, and also invited Kyaw, who is our editor. So here we are, Richard and Kyaw. Is it time to celebrate, Richard? Because today is the 10th of November, 2 days after the election. The results are quite clear, even though there hasn't been any official outcome yet. But they indicated that the NLD, National League for Democracy, is going to win a landslide victory. And is it time to celebrate?
Well, the celebrations have been in full swing since almost the time that the polls closed, and I think it's very clear which direction this is going in. Yeah. It's going towards a very large NLD majority. So this is a remarkable moment for Myanmar, and I think we have to recognize how remarkable it is. It's the first time since 1960 that the people have had a chance to express their voice and for that voice to be heard.
Without fear.
They spoke loudly in 1990. But it wasn't heard. Now they've spoken loudly again, and this time there's a chance it will be heard. So I think this is a really remarkable moment in Myanmar's recent history.
So I think we believe that it is time to keep the momentum going. And when you talk about direction, I'd like to hear more about what direction this country going to go. At the back of the people's mind, and they have shown and clearly demonstrated that who they wanted to lead the country. And it was very important for this country. We're going to have 5 months of before, and at the end of the March, there will be transfer of power. Mm-hmm. But signs are pretty positive, but there are worries, there are uncertainty, there are nervousness, as usual.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first thing that the NLD has to do is work out how to build a constructive relationship with the Commander-in-Chief. Because although the USDP might mostly be exiting the parliament, the military is not going anywhere. Both because of the Constitution and the powers that the Constitution gives to the military, but also because they are the largest and most powerful institution in this country. No one can govern this country without having a good relationship with the military. So that will be the first priority.
I think in terms of the role of the military this time, and it is quite different from the 1990 situation. Now this time the military has some kind of rights. They want it in the constitution. For example, in the constitution, they get 25% of the military appointees, and they even choose one president, one vice president, right? So they will have one vice president, and then the 25% of the military appointees in the parliament, as well as the 3 important ministerial positions in the government as well. So probably I think they might be satisfied, especially the Commander-in-Chief, might be satisfied and ready to let it go to the opposition party. Or
yes, thanks, Kyaw. But before going to more complex issues, I was curious because there were initial doubt, initial fear about the government or regime leaders going to cheat and manage and fix the outcome of the election. Or possible violence, but it seems to me that it was a violence-free election. People are very impressive and very disciplined. Disciplinary democracy election, I would say. I will congratulate the Burmese people from here. I think, but I think, was it intended, or the government were they expecting this kind of outcome, or were they expecting more balance, 40-50? So there were a lot of theories before the election, but that seems to be the supreme victory by NLD.
I think the extent of the victory has been a surprise to everyone, even possibly the NLD. But I think the fact that the NLD could win must have been one of the scenarios that the USDP leadership, but also the military leadership, factored into their calculations. They may have hoped that the win was not as big as this, but they can't have ignored the possibility that it could have been. And so I think, that it may come as a shock, but not something they haven't thought about or planned for.
I discussed with a lot of people, you know, like rich cronies and taxi drivers and tractor driver. They have found a common ground. They all go out and vote. And even the very, very, very rich people, and quietly admitted who they voted for. You know the answer. So it was very interesting to me to see that. And even civil servants and former regime leaders, some are mid-ranking officer, they came out and vote for the NLD, quite obviously. So they want to change.
I think that's the only thing that Burmese people wanted and have desired over the past decades. That's why Burmese situation, political situation is actually black and white, still black and white. That's why we didn't see a different result or outcome of this election and from the 1990s election result. So people still think that, you know, they just want to see new faces, especially in the government. That's what they want. That's when they came out and voted for the sole party they like.
There was a lot of skepticism leading up to the polls that there would be, you know, a manipulation of the count, that advance votes would be used, that the constitution was already stacked against the NLD. I think in a sense this helped because everyone wanted to get out so that their vote would count.
And also influence of the Mabata.
And also influence of the Mabata. I think that peaked before election day, we can say. It hasn't gone away, but it definitely peaked before election day. So, you know, I think that all of those concerns galvanized the people to get out, and we see a very high voter turnout. Get out on the day, not to leave anything to chance with advance votes, and to vote very clearly NLD. I think that helped the NLD, in fact.
So Richard, with the sweeping victory, people give a power back to the NLD and Aung San Suu Kyi leadership. So what is next?
In a sense, I think it's very good that there's this 5-month transition period. Because if the handover came next week, I'm not sure that, you know, it could be pretty chaotic. It gives a chance, you know, for the NLD to prepare in detail what it's going to do on the day that it takes legislative and executive power. It also gives time, hopefully, to negotiate the terms of the cohabitation, because it will be a cohabitation. It'll be a cohabitation for 5 months between the old administration and the new one, and it'll be a cohabitation for 5 years between the military and the newly elected government. And they're going to have to learn to get along. Now, there hasn't been very good indications from the pre-election period that there is a culture and willingness on all sides to come together around a table and negotiate. But that's now vital. It's vital that those discussions are had.
So what about the transfer of power? How do you see it?
Well, that also totally depends on how the leaders of the both sides will get the deal. That's the most important thing. So next, I think the parliament resumed on 16. At the time, I think the result of the outcome will indicate more who is winning. And then if the NLD is going to win, and then the leader of the party, Aung San Suu Kyi, should initiate to discuss and to work to invite the current president as well as the commander-in-chief, and to start talking national reconciliation process on the table. I think that the most important question is whether the other side will accept that kind of invitation quickly or not.
I think that's right. I fully agree. I think we shouldn't only see negotiation as happening around a table with all people present. I think the way that politics often works, and the way particularly that it works in Myanmar, is quiet conversations between individuals.
So you said a quiet conversation.
So there may have to be you know, those formal set piece meetings, but we know how they go. They have an agenda. The agenda is read out. They have a script. That's not where horse trading is done or deals are made. Deals are made in the back room, and I think it's important that both of those conversations happen.
What about, I will be a little bit cynical and a little bit critical on that issues of the wealth, and then the UBI and MEC, the army control, gun state-owned companies, as well as reports after reports about the human rights abuses committed by the military and generals. How do we see the NLD and Aung San Suu Kyi is going to handle all these sensitive issues?
It's going to be very difficult because she doesn't have executive control over these institutions, neither the military nor the police. And that means
But she still said that she's above the president.
Well, of course, being above the president also implies that you're above the commander-in-chief, and that's a difficult starting point for a conversation with someone who is very, very powerful
Exactly.
and proud. And,
Pretty premature to make a remark, I think.
so that's how she will have to adjust her messaging and also the way that she approaches these conversations if she wants to have a constructive dialogue with both of those people. So I think it'll be very difficult. You know, as I said, and as we all recognize, I mean, the military is not going anywhere, and so it's going to be a question of how to encourage the military down a path of reform rather than map out that path of reform, pull them and push them down it. The military, I think, does see a different future for themselves. They want to be a proud institution that is respected by the people of the country, that's respected institutionally, which is professional. And I think they see, you know, democratization and the peace process as ways to extricate themselves from the messiness of running the country or mismanaging the country from fighting domestic threats and insurgents and being able to become a military more like is seen in other peaceful countries, right? I think they understand that that is the future for the military. They welcome that future, but how to get there from where they are now, that's a very difficult question. Because at some point, they're going to have to give up those constitutional prerogatives and get their power and their respect from who they are and what they do, rather than from clauses in the Constitution. At some point, I think that will have to happen. The question is, on what timescale, with what interim steps? And that's going to be an incredibly sensitive process, which is largely, I think, going to be led by them. They're going to decide the point at which they move, and I think it's going to be very hard to sort of push them.
I think in terms of that kind of very sensitive issue, it's very difficult to predict that how the NLD or the other side also will discuss or deal with kind of the MEC issue. But the fundamental, one of the most important messages Aung San Suu Kyi keeps sending is she won't take any kind of revenge to the other side.
She's been consistent with reconciliation and reconciliatory messages.
Yes.
Am I right?
So yes, that's true. So in that case, I think every matter they will discuss should be based on that foundation, and then the winner will take all. So that's not the situation I think she will take and do. So
I don't think winner takes all attitude in this critical period, in this critical transition time, won't be very wise, I think. What do you think, Richard?
I mean, I think, you know, in electoral democracy terms, if you have a stable electoral democracy, then a massive landslide is a mandate to implement one's policies and one's platform. In a transition arrangement, you want to try and keep everyone on board the transition. And that requires building bridges and keeping a large, keeping the polity inclusive. And landslides can be polarizing, and they can make people feel that they've been excluded or actually exclude people. And that's very dangerous in a transition.
That's right. That's why I feel like looking at this election is more like a referendum, and people choosing between black and white. And talking about this critical transition, one of the big elements in it is that peace process. It's still ongoing, but still very fragile. And then now, boom, we have an election, and then won by the NLD. How is it going to go ahead? This peace process, Myanmar peace centers, and all those international observers and international donors who are, who wanted to keep that momentum going.
It's going to be very hard to keep the momentum going because I think there will be a perception, at least initially, that maybe what the president will offer is not something that the commander-in-chief will automatically deliver. There's been that suspicion in the peace process all along, that President Thein Sein or Minister Aung Min could make certain concessions, but there was always a suspicion, does the military agree, will they follow up? And in a peace process, it's really the military which is the key, especially in the ceasefire process, right, in the early stages. And so I think those questions will resurface, perhaps even more strongly. Is the president able to deliver on commitments? And the other thing is that with such a resounding success from the NLD, which is rightly or wrongly perceived by many ethnic communities as a Burman party.
That's my next question. Yeah, go on.
That perception is there, rightly or wrongly, and so they will feel also that now they are facing a very strong Burman
That's right.
group across the table from them, across the
Right.
peace table, and so that's going to be also very, very important.
But also in a positive light, and those Burman group who will come into power in a few months' time are the most trusted, probably, by those unsigned ethnic groups, that including Kachin and War and other powerful armies. They might think that they might get a better deal if NLD comes into power. Don't you think so, Richard and Joshua?
Yes, that's right. I think we shouldn't forget that now the NLD was voted by the ethnic people as well in the ethnic areas. That's what we shouldn't forget, never. And then, of course, some of the ethnic groups also represent their ethnic own people in their areas.
Right.
So in that case, and then now we can see the current peace process is face a lot of difficulties, and because there is no trust, especially between the government and the military and the ethnic groups. So I think the trust is still fundamentally important. In that case, probably if with a lot of votes from the ethnic people this time, I think NLD might want more trust than the current government. That means if they can form the government, they might even have a maybe better relationship with the ethnic groups as well.
Do you agree with it, Richard?
I think that's right. I think there can be a moment of trust, provided that there is trust that the military and the government will work together on the peace process. But also, if we look to the next stages of the peace process, the political dialogue, what really has to be delivered in order to make that successical is federalism and resource distribution. That means shifting political power and wealth from the center to the periphery. The periphery wants this shift. The question is, when the question is put to the Myanmar people, to the Burma people, okay, shall we redistribute political power and economic resources away from you? Will they support it? Will nationalists support it? Will it be easy for the NLD to get the Burman heartland on board? Because this is the most important constituency in that decision making.
Well, again, I want to chip into it because of not only the Burma NLD or Burman, but also these wealth and these resource, how to call it, exploitive, industries are controlled, managed, and monopolized by the military and their family members and their companies and associates and those cronies. And this is the hard part, I think, and critical part where Aung San Suu Kyi will have to, or NLD will have to tackle this issue, not with ethnic leaders alone, but also with the military. That's the difficult part, don't you think so?
Very difficult, and we've seen recently the scale of these resources with the revelations on jade and so on. There's a huge amount of money that we're talking about. So there's the white economy, there's redistributing state budgets, that's one thing. But the other thing is bringing the whole black economy back onto the books. And that's a huge challenge for any government.
So my last question is, well, there should be so many questions, but we have limitation of time. But who is going to be the president? Everybody's asking this question. If NLD, because NLD is winning the now sweeping victory, and then they can nominate the president, and Aung San Suu Kyi won't be a president under this constitution. But there are a lot of potential candidates in the mind. And people are talking about it. The media is speculating. Media is speculating who will be a president. So who is going to be the president? Is it Thein Sein coming back, or is if they negotiate, or Uncle U Tin U, or Uncle U Min Ting? Local press, indicating different kinds of candidates, or Dr. Tim Ewing, or Min Kunai, or Kontong U. So you have a broad.
Now, in my view, I mean, I don't have any name. I don't have any name, but yeah, that's right. But what we can say, I think nobody will disagree that what we can say is Aung San Suu Kyi, of course, if her party wins, and then she will definitely choose the person. I mean, again, who she can really work together with. That's the most important thing. And then, so it's not really. I mean, for the voters' points of view, actually they know that Aung San Suu Kyi, many of them know that Aung San Suu Kyi won't be the president, even though they voted for the NLD. But it doesn't matter for them. That means that they just want the leadership of Aung San Suu Kyi. So in that case, Aung San Suu Kyi, that's why I think probably Aung San Suu Kyi says that she will be above the president, and then the voters will like it. But the other side, I mean, the government and then the commander-in-chief of the military might not like it.
Well, this is also probably, I read it in the message because it's quite a controversial remark she made ahead of the election. But also it's a very strong message to her voters domestically that I'm going to win, I'm going to be above the president. This is a campaign message, I believe.
I think we should look at when she said that word, whether she was joking in her face, because now also people think that there is someone above the president.
But also I think critical question about constitution, about this constitution is just a piece of paper, and if they come into power, they can stay amended anyway. So Richard.
I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know who it will be.
Nobody has.
But I would say a couple of things. That whoever she chooses has to have some stature and credibility. Doesn't matter if she's making the big political decisions. That person is granted by the Constitution full executive power, strong executive power. They have the presidential seal. They sit in the presidential chair. It has to be someone who has some credibility.
Right.
The second thing is that there is a tension between what Aung San Suu Kyi has said, which is that she would choose a bona fide civilian from within the NLD, and the Constitution, which says that whoever is president must have military experience.
Not really military experience, military, what should I say, points of views, or
we should
not
we
really
should say it in
experience.
Burmese because the English translation is always.
Well, then I will be very disappointed. Whoever made names I mentioned just recently, that they don't have a military experience except Angga Uwintain and Angga.
Actually, they can choose any civilian with the perspective of the military points of view or something like that.
It's a very weakly expressed clause, right? With goodwill, it could be applied to almost anybody. With bad will, it could be applied to almost nobody. So we have to see how that goes. And I really don't think that we're going to be getting into a situation where the Constitutional Tribunal is invoked to challenge the presidency. I mean, I think this is not how things are going to go. But it does mean practically that it has to be someone who understands how military people work, has some experience of interacting with these. Doesn't mean military background, but it means the right kind of person. And that's going to be very difficult, a very difficult choice.
Thank you, Richard and Chosa. The last question. I need a very, very brief answer. Are you guys really hopeful or very optimistic? The future of this country.
I'm always optimistic about the future of this country, yes.
Chosa?
I think we have a brighter hope at this time after the election.
I think so far we are on the right track, I think.
Bumpy
Thank
road
you.
ahead, but
Yeah,
to a
thank you,
good destination.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.